Cooper on the Case. A Masonic Authors Guild International production.
Seeing the Shadow of Solomon. Welcome to another episode of Cooper on the Case. First, a general observation. Since I began this series of investigations, I have come to discern a pattern, and a pattern that is repeated over decades and centuries, and that pattern is about Freemasonry. I shall return to the subject in another podcast, but it is sufficient to say that this podcast is one small part of that pattern. This podcast investigates some of the claims made in the book The Shadow of Solomon, The Lost Secrets of the Freemasons Revealed, by Lawrence Gardner, published in 2005. The rear cover of the book proclaims, quote, "What ancient mystery lies behind the creation of Freemasonry, a lost secret so powerful that the Brotherhood itself has been on a quest to find it for 300 years, close quote. Inside the front jacket states, quote, "Gardner answers these questions," close quote, and more. As an historian interested in the origins of Freemasonry, I was immediately drawn to this book that might provide answers to questions that I myself have been seeking answers to for many years. As soon as I started to read the book, I was aware of a staggering number of historical inaccuracies, so much so that I wondered if I was actually reading a novel, not a work of historical writing. However, the whole point of Cooper on the Case is to ascertain the sources used by authors, confirm that they are correct, that is, the origins of the citations are identifiable, accurate, and also that anyone can confirm that they support the points, claims, suggestions, etc. being made by the author. It is for these reasons that footnotes or endnotes are of major importance in assessing the quality of the work of any author. And therefore I have reluctantly restricted myself in this podcast to examining some of the endnotes in an attempt to understand where the author obtained his information. The endnotes fall into two types, specific and general. The latter is discussed first. An example will serve to illustrate this. On page 143 he states, quote, "The original seal of the monastic preceptory of the Knights Templar and Canons of St. Anthony is preserved in the library of the Faculty of Advocates in Edinburgh," close quote. Apart from the fact that the Knights Templar and the Knights of St. Anthony were two separate orders under the auspices of the Roman Catholic Church, the author adds in endnote 5 on page 359 that this is located in the Scottish National Archive, that is, the NSA, in Edinburgh, but does not provide a catalogue reference or location. This rather suggests that the author never visited the NSA to view the seal, and so cannot provide its exact location, and the NSA is a very big place. The author then provides another clue as to where he obtained the information and image of the seal. When he next discusses the Knights of St. Anthony, their uniform and main symbol, a tau, in endnote 6, which states that the seal can be seen on a particular website, which no longer exists. Using websites as a source of information is notoriously problematic, as this example shows, and if used in a historical work is normally supported by other sources as footnotes or endnotes for this very reason. As some listeners will know, I have a particular interest in Roslin Chapel and all that that implies, and so it was of interest that I read, quote, "Some have suggested that the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant resides at Roslin, while others prefer the idea of a scroll written by Jesus, or, more realistically, manuscripts brought back from Jerusalem by the Knights Templar," close quote. The source of this information is given in endnote 7 of chapter 10, quote, "Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas, The Hiram Key, Century, London, 1996, chapter 8 and page 77, close quote. The source reads as follows, quote, "No, those trunks contained the scrolls from Jerusalem that had been brought to Scotland by the Knights Templar," close quote. In other words, the source is nothing other than the opinion of another popular writers who cannot provide a source because it is no more than opinion and is not fact. Magi previously discussed the difference between fact and opinion, and those who wish to understand the differences or refresh their memory might like to listen again to the podcast, which was episode 19 of season 1. Between pages 376 and 387 of the book, the author provides an appendix with the title, quote, Masonic and Monarchical Timeline, close quote, which is a list of dates considered by the author to be important under the reign of various kings and queens and monarchs of Britain. However, the mixing of, quote, Masonic and monarchical, close quote, implies that the two are irrevocably linked. They are not. There is no explanation of why certain events are included. For instance, quote, 1384 John Wycliffe's English Bible translation, close quote, and 1488 Templars and Hospitallers jointly administered in Scotland, close quote. In the latter example, why an event in Scotland, which I have yet to confirm, is placed during the reign of England V of England, when there was either James III or James IV in Scotland at the same time, is not at all clear, and, well, there are no sources cited relating to this appendix. One last observation regarding the use of endnotes in this book. The author, on several occasions, cites his own earlier books as sources of the information he uses in this book. Such self-quoting is inherently dangerous because of the inherent bias contained within one's own writing. Conclusion. Although the author makes extensive use of endnotes, they are not used in the normal manner. As said earlier, there are roughly two categories, specific and general. Some of the specific references are useful where they do provide links to authoritative sources, but all too often they lead to a dead end of self-quoting or the mere opinion of others. He makes no use at all of primary sources. The importance of different types of sources was discussed in the podcast episode 4 of season 1 and may well be worth listening to again or to refresh one's memory. Ultimately, the endnotes reveal that this was by no means an original work, but is merely a rehash with a little reinterpretation of other people's work, and sadly the endnotes appear to be intended to disguise the lack of scholarly research. With this podcast, we shall leave the realm of pseudo-historical books and focus more on other matters. So keep listening to Cooper on the Case for new and interesting investigations. Now, as to that other case, that case of whiskey, well, keep tuning in.
Cooper on the Case. This podcast is for educational purposes and perhaps entertainment. While the Masonic Authors Guild International provides the most accurate information possible, listeners use the information at their own risk. This podcast and its contents are Magi's properties, as are all the opinions and information it presents. Robert L. D. Cooper's, Mark A. Tabbertson, any other speakers' views and opinions within the podcast do not represent nor speak for Freemasonry, any Masonic organization, their former or current employers in any way, shape, or form. Magi, Cooper, or Tabbert will not compensate you in any way whatsoever if you happen to ever suffer an inconvenience due to the information herein contained.